I want you to stop whatever you are doing right now. Not pause. Stop. Because what I am about to tell you took me a long time to understand. And once you see it, you will look at the people around you completely differently. You will look at your own life completely differently. Here it is. The wealthiest person in your life probably does not look wealthy. Not yet. They are not driving the nicest car in the parking lot. They are not wearing the most expensive clothes at the dinner table. They are not taking the most photographed holidays. In fact, right now, the people around them genuinely feel sorry for them. They think this person is struggling. They think this person is missing out. They think this person has not figured life out yet. But here is the truth those people cannot see. This person figured it out a long time ago. They just figured out something different. Something that looks like nothing. Until suddenly, it looks like everything. And by the time everyone else realizes what happened, the gap is already too large to close. This video is about that person. How they think. What they do differently. What they understand about money, psychology, and human behavior that almost nobody around them has figured out. And I want to be honest with you before we start. This is not a video about getting rich quickly. This is not a motivational speech. This is not a list of tips you will forget by tomorrow. This is a video about one of the most psychologically difficult things a human being can choose to do in a world that is constantly, loudly, and very persuasively telling them to do the opposite. And if you stay until the end, I genuinely believe it will change something in how you see your own situation. Let us start from the beginning. Part 1. The day it clicked. There is a moment. Not everyone gets it at the same age. Not everyone gets it at all. But for the people who eventually build something real, there is almost always a specific moment. A conversation, a number on a screen, a birthday that felt wrong, a colleague who retired comfortably while you realized, quietly, privately, in a way you told nobody, that you had been operating without a plan. Not irresponsible, not reckless, just without a plan. Going through the motions of a financial life that looked fine from the outside. Salary arriving, bills getting paid, life continuing, without ever sitting down and asking the question that changes everything. Where is this actually going? For Rayan, and I want to tell you about Rayan, because his story is not special, and that is exactly why it matters. That moment came on an ordinary Wednesday evening. He was 24 years old. He had been working for 2 years. He had a salary that his parents were proud of. He had a social life that looked good on his phone. And he had, when he actually sat down and counted, 11,000 in savings. After 2 years of working, after 2 years of earning, after 2 years of being, by every external measure, a functional, responsible adult. 11,000, and he sat with that number for a long time, not in panic, not in shame, in something quieter than both of those things. He sat with the realization that he had been present for every one of those 730 days, and he had almost nothing to show for them. Not because he had wasted money dramatically, not because he had made a single obviously bad decision, but because he had never made a single obviously intentional one either. He had just moved through time. And time, it turns out, does not build wealth by itself. Only decisions build wealth. And Rayan had been making the same default decision for 2 years without realizing it was a decision at all. He had been choosing the appearance of a good life over the architecture of an actual one. That Wednesday evening, he decided to stop. Part 2. What the research actually says. Before I tell you what Rayan did next, I want to tell you something that took researchers decades to prove. Because the mistake most people make when they decide to change their financial life is they think the problem is information. They think they just need to know more. Better investment strategies, better budgeting systems, better tools. And so they consume content, they read books, they watch videos, and then, 6 months later, nothing has changed. Because the problem was never information. The problem is psychology. In 1954, a psychologist named Leon Festinger published a theory that I believe is one of the most important things ever written about human financial behavior, even though Festinger was not writing about finance at all. He called it social comparison theory. And the core finding was this: human beings do not evaluate their lives in absolute terms. We do not wake up in the morning and think, I have shelter, food, safety, health, and people who care about me. I am doing well. We wake up and look sideways. We compare, not to people across the world, not to people in history, not to any objective standard of living. We compare to the specific, visible, immediately around us people we see regularly. Our colleagues, our friends, our family, our social media feed. And here is why this destroys financial progress for most people. As the people around you upgrade their visible lifestyle, your brain registers your unchanged lifestyle as decline, not as stability, not as discipline, as falling behind, even when you are building something, even when the numbers in your accounts are growing, even when, by any objective measure, you are moving forward. Your brain looks at your colleague's new car and tells you that you are losing. This is not weakness. This is not a character flaw. This is a deeply wired evolutionary mechanism that helped humans survive in small tribal groups for hundreds of thousands of years, now running in a modern world it was never designed for, and it cost the average person hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. Not in one dramatic moment, in 1,000 small decisions that each felt completely reasonable at the time. The slight upgrade, the unnecessary addition, the purchase that was really about how it would look, rather than what it would do. Rayan understood this the night he sat with his $11,000 number. He was not behind because of bad luck. He was behind because his brain had been making social comparison decisions while he thought he was making financial ones. Part 3. The first decision. The following morning, Rayan did something that sounds almost embarrassingly small. He opened a second bank account. Not an investment account, not a trading platform, not anything complicated. A separate savings account at a different bank, and he set up an automatic transfer, 20% of his salary, every month, the day after it arrived, before he could see it as available money, before his brain could find a use for it, before social comparison could turn it into something visible, gone, automatically, into an account he did not have a card for. Now I want to be very honest with you about what this felt like. It did not feel like wealth building. It felt like losing money, because his lifestyle, already not extravagant, suddenly felt tighter. His friends were talking about a trip. He said maybe. A new phone came out that he genuinely wanted. He waited. His colleague bought a car upgrade and mentioned it 3 times in 1 week. Rayan nodded and said nothing. From the outside, this looked like struggle. From the inside, this was the first intentional financial decision Rayan had made since he started earning. Behavioral economists have a name for what he built that morning. They call it a commitment device, a structure you create in advance to protect your future self from the completely predictable, completely human weaknesses of your present self. Because the research is clear on this. Willpower alone does not work. People who rely on willpower to save money consistently save less than people who automate the decision and remove willpower from the equation entirely. You do not need more discipline. You need better architecture. Rayan built the architecture, and then he let it run. Part 4. The mathematics that changes everything. 3 months in, Rayan had saved more than he had in the entire previous year. Not because his salary changed, not because he found a magic system, because he stopped making the same default decision by default and started making a different one by design. But saving alone was not the plan. Because here is something most people understand intellectually, but never actually feel in their body until they sit down and do the calculation themselves. Money sitting in a savings account does not build wealth. Money invested, consistently, patiently, without panic, builds wealth. And the difference between those two outcomes, over a lifetime is not a small difference. It is the difference between financial anxiety and financial freedom. Let me give you the number that changed how Rayan saw everything. If you invest $300 per month, starting today, at the historical average annual return of broad market index funds, which across the last 100 years has been approximately 10%, here is what happens. After 5 years, you have $20,000. After 10 years, you have $57,000. After 20 years, you have $200,000. After 30 years, you have $678,000 from $300 per month. The price of a slightly more expensive phone plan. The cost of 2 or 3 restaurant dinners. The difference between the car you need and the car that looks good in the parking lot. Now here is the part of this calculation that most people skip. They look at the 30-year number and say, that is too far away. I need money now. I need to see progress now. 30 years is not a real timeline for a real person, and I understand that feeling completely. But consider what Rayan thought when he ran this calculation. He was 24. 30 years away, he would be 54. Not retired, not old, not at the end of anything. 54 years old, with $678,000, plus whatever his income had grown into over 3 decades, plus whatever skills he had built, plus whatever other assets he had accumulated along the way. At 54, with the second half of his adult life still ahead of him, he did not feel like 30 years was too far away. He felt, for the first time, like 30 years was not enough time to waste. What silence protects. 6 months in, Rayan had not told a single person what he was doing. Not his best friend, not his family, not his closest colleague. And this was not accidental. In 2009, psychologist Peter Gollwitzer at New York University published research that should be required reading for anyone who has ever made a financial resolution and then somehow never followed through on it. His finding was this: when you announce a goal publicly, when you tell people what you are planning to do, your brain releases dopamine, the same neurological reward it releases when you actually achieve something. And because your brain has already received the reward, your motivation to do the actual work drops measurably. You told people you were going to get fit. They said, "That is amazing, good for you." And somehow, 3 weeks later, you stopped going. Not because you are weak, because your brain already felt the social reward of the announcement and did not see the point of doing the hard part. Rayan had read this research, and so he said nothing. When friends asked about the trip, he said maybe. When his family asked about his financial plans, he said he was figuring it out. When his colleague bought the new car and asked what Rayan was saving for, Rayan smiled and said nothing specific, because the most dangerous thing he could do to his own progress was turn it into a story he told people before it was finished. The silence was not humility. The silence was strategy. Part 6. The second layer. Year 1 ended. Rayan had invested just under $4,000. He had a $3,000 emergency fund, sitting untouched in a separate account, existing for one purpose only: to ensure that no single unexpected event, a job loss, a medical bill, a car repair, would ever force him to sell his investments at the wrong time, or go into high-interest debt, or start the whole process over from zero. This emergency fund was not exciting. It earned very little. It just sat there. But it was doing something invisible and essential. It was making his entire financial system resilient. And then Rayan started building the second layer. Not more savings, not more investment, a skill. He spent 6 months identifying the single most valuable skill he could realistically develop, given his current job, his available evenings, and the specific gaps he could see in the market around him. Not his passion, not what he had studied, what the market was paying for, because passion without income is an expensive hobby, and income without a skill has a ceiling that never moves. He chose something specific, spent 2 to 3 hours per week, not every day, not in a way that was unsustainable, 2 to 3 hours, consistently, every week, for 12 months, and at the end of those 12 months, he had a skill that generated $400 extra per month. $400 that went immediately, automatically, into investments. His monthly contribution had gone from $300 to $700 without a promotion, without a salary negotiation, without any change in his primary job, just a skill, built quietly. In evenings nobody saw. Part 7, Year 3. 3 years after that Wednesday evening. Here is what Rayan's life looks like from the outside. Same car, a little older now, same apartment, a little more familiar, same clothes, chosen for quality rather than brand. His colleagues have upgraded twice around him. New cars, better neighborhoods, more expensive social lives. They earn what Rayan earns. They spend what they earn. Rayan earns what Rayan earns, and invests the part that would otherwise go toward the appearance of earning more. Here is what his life looks like from the inside. $22,000 invested, growing at a rate that, without him adding another cent, would reach over $200,000 in 20 years. But he is still adding $700 per month now, sometimes $900. A $6,000 emergency fund. That means he has never once, in 3 years, made a financial decision from a position of fear or desperation. 0 consumer debt. A freelance skill that earns him between $500 and $800 per month, on top of his salary, working for himself, for clients who pay him because he is good, not because he needs the money. And something harder to measure but more important than any of those numbers, a relationship with money that is no longer driven by what the people around him are doing. He does not compare, not because he stopped caring what people think, but because he is playing a completely different game, with a completely different scoreboard, that the people around him cannot even see yet. Part 8. The moment the gap appears, it does not happen dramatically. There is no single day where everything changes, no announcement, no revelation, no visible transformation. It is more like, one afternoon, a colleague asks Rayan a question, casual, offhand, about what he would do if the company went through a restructure, and Rayan answers, calmly, without the tightening around the eyes that most people get when that question lands, without reaching for his phone, without changing the subject. He just answers, honestly, specifically, with the quiet confidence of someone who has thought about this scenario and is not afraid of it. His colleague goes quiet for a second, says, "You seem really calm about that." Rayan shrugs, says, "I have been preparing for a while." The colleague does not push further, but something shifted in that moment. A small, almost imperceptible crack, in the assumption that Rayan was just getting by, ending the truth about how it looks. I want to end this video with something honest, not motivational, not inspiring, just honest. Quiet wealth building is hard, not because the steps are complicated. The steps are not complicated. It is hard because you will do the right things, and nothing will look different for a long time. Your car will still look the same as it does today. Your apartment will still be the same apartment, and the people around you, who are making louder, more visible, more socially rewarded financial decisions, will look like they are winning for a while. Your brain, running its ancient social comparison software, will tell you that you are losing, regularly, convincingly, in moments of genuine doubt, and the only thing that will carry you through those moments is not discipline, is not willpower, is not motivation. It is the deep, unshakable understanding of exactly what you are building, and exactly what it will be worth, when the gap finally becomes visible, because it will become visible, not on a day you plan for, not in a dramatic moment, just quietly, the way everything real is built, quietly, patiently, without an audience, until one day, the people who felt sorry for your simple car call your financial position luck. They will say you got a good opportunity. They will say the timing worked out for you. They will build a story that explains your outcome without requiring them to examine their own choices. Let them, because you will know what actually happened. A Wednesday evening decision, a second bank account, an automatic transfer, 2 to 3 hours a week on a skill nobody saw you building, $700 a month into an index fund that most people your age spent on things they cannot remember buying. That is all it was. That is all it ever needed to be, while nobody was watching.